So I just wanted to remind you that after the readings, we hope everybody will mingle more and eat and drink and take advantage of the books for sale outside and some current and past issues of our magazines and journals, and just enjoy the evening. So, I'm Jenny Lawrence, a former trustee and member of the library for 40 years, which isn't very long in the 250 plus years of our history. But tonight I want to welcome you to the first ever literary magazine Salon, thanks to Carolyn Waters and her launching of the Writer's Life series. This last year has seen all sorts of firsts on behalf of the library's writing community, leading off in January last year with a morning presentation by a publishing insider on getting a manuscript accepted, and since then, subjects from permissions and copyright to marketing and publicity. Then, at open mic night in October, 22 readers each had 5 minutes to present a wonderful and random mix of fiction, poetry, and essay, whether a found poem from the Upper East Side's Yellow Pages, or a memory piece by a member writer who took off her clothes to oblige Salvador Dali's desire to sketch her. We are interested in reaching out to an even wider community of adventurous, emerging, perhaps under-recognized, and certainly in this economic climate, undernourished world of literary magazines. And tonight, we have 3 of the finest. One Story was founded 8 years ago on a wing and a prayer by 2 friends, Hannah Tinti and Meredith Bacha, convinced that the short story could be a standalone work of art, with the result that subscribers throughout the year receive 1 story every 3 weeks, which arrives in the mail, as Hannah and Meredith point out, like a letter from a friend. One Story focuses on its emerging writers as well as on its editors, training them to work closely together to realize the story's final form. Hannah, One Story's editor-in-chief and author of the short story collections Animal Crackers and the prize-winning novel The Good Thief, will present Terese Svoboda, who will be reading tonight's selection from One Story. Jubilat, founded in 2000 at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, is now celebrating its 14th issue. Jubilat publishes the best of contemporary American poetry, along with a variety of reprints, found pieces, lyric prose, art, and interviews. Its co-founder, Rob Casper, was here last year as part of a panel on the market for literary magazines. Rob is also programs director of the Poetry Society of America, among his other positions. Tonight, he is introducing Jubilat's Cathy Park Hong. A Public Space was founded in 2005 and comes out 3 times a year, and perhaps eventually 4 times a year, realized largely through the inspiration of its accomplished editor, Brigid Hughes, formerly editor of the Paris Review. A Public Space, now in its 9th issue, draws its fiction, poetry, and essays from such outstanding authors as Marilyn Robinson, Haruki Murakami, Rick Moody, and Anna Devere Smith. The magazine's focused portfolios examine writings from different countries. Issue 1, for example, on the literature of Japan. Issue 2, that of Russia. Issue 3, Peru. Brigid will introduce the Public Space writer, John Wray. Please join me in welcoming voices from the brave, vital, and creative writing edge of independent literary journals.
Thanks all for coming tonight. This is wonderful. It's really exciting to be here at the library, and I want to thank Jenny for sort of spearheading this effort, bringing us together, and I'm so thrilled to be here. And just so for those of you who've never seen one story before, this is what it looks like. We publish one short story at a time, and it comes out every 3 weeks. And we've got issues, I think, outside of the back if you'd like to see a copy or purchase one for yourself. Take it with you. We launched our first issue in April 2002. We now have 10,000 readers. So in a short period of time, we've become sort of one of the more widely read literary magazines. And I'm so thrilled to share some of our work with you tonight, particularly Therese's work. Terese Svoboda is the author of 11 books of poetry, prose, translation, and memoir. Trailer Girl and Other Stories, her third novel, is being reissued in paper this fall. Unnerve Thyself, the violent and enthralling short stories in Trailer Girl detonate on contact, wrote Vanity Fair about her work. Her memoir, Black Glasses Like Clark Kent, was termed astounding by the New York Post and selected as a Japan Times Best of Asia 2008 book. It also won the Grey Wolf Nonfiction Prize. Praised as a fabulous fabulist by Publishers Weekly for her fourth novel, Tin God, Vogue also lauded her first book, Cannibal, as a female Heart of Darkness. Svoboda is also the recipient of the Books Prize for Cannibal, the Iowa Prize for Poetry, and the O. Henry Award for the short story. Her work has been selected for the Writer's Choice column in the New York Times Book Review, a Spin Magazine Book of the Year, and one of the Voice Literary Supplement's 10 Best Reads. Her fifth and sixth novels are scheduled to appear in 2010 and 2011, and she is our current issue, Bomb Jockey. Please help me welcome Terese.
Thank you. Delight to be here. The wood's nice. Bomb Jockey. The town kicked up its legs, put on an actual parade for those who decide which town got the bomb works, her daddy being one of the deciders, a tall, heavy-nosed state politician who looked good in a suit when others didn't. His wife came along for the parade, and their daughter handed out flyers. Oops, handed out flyers. I'm back. And their daughter handed out flyers coincidental with the next election. Hump took 2. The other guys kept their hands in their pockets once they thank you ma'amed her. Hump didn't even look at the flyer before he wanted another. Known as Hump to his face, a face that looked enough like John Wayne's that some people thought he should get a rope and start in with malaria, if not horse. He was not as shy as he could have been. Since you don't get to be 18 looking like that without some serious experience. Okay, good. Let's see, that's a long sentence. We'll start at the top there. Known as Hump to his face, a face that looked enough like John Wayne's that some people thought he should get a rope and start in with a lariat, if not a horse. He was not as shy as he could have been, since you don't get to be 18 looking like that without some serious experience. A Mary Beth was trying to wound him grievously by applying for a job in the next town. A Paulette slunk around in a long dress in this 95-degree parade weather in the middle of a cloak that read, "We're ready if you are." And a Nancy wore nothing under her band jacket, just in case. He pocketed those flyers without looking at them because he was looking at her. "Vote Walker," she yelled. "He'll give you what you want. Vote Walker, you won't regret it." She stood dark-eyed, haired, red-lipped, and tall. "Chewing gum?" he asked when she took a breath. He held it to her face, hoping to quiet her. "Kind of you," she said, taking it and unwrapping it. "Vote Walker," she shouted after popping it into her mouth. "I thought you might be getting hoarse." He sidled himself a little closer. He was wide through the chest and thin at the waist. He could get close. She chewed, she nodded. He pulled his flyers out of his pocket and waved them beside her, shouting, "Vote Walker." At the end of the parade that turned out short due to the size of the town, her father strutted over the way a politician would, hand shaking with his right and working the boy's shoulder muscle with his left. "We'll get the bomb works built here in no time, son. Don't you worry about that, as long as the vote goes my way." "I think you have a chance," he said. "At least here. We don't get many running for the big offices who come around here." Oh, I'm partial to seeing the will of all the people all right, the politician said, his hand moving to the back of his daughter's neck as if he were about to herd her from him. He went on, despite other constituents beelining toward him, not just the capitals. When people anywhere talk, I perk up. With the war on, a bomb plant is just what you need out here. The man from the paper took a picture of the three of them. Just imagine this whole place lit up with new enterprise, he said, his buggy black beanhole eyes just as lit up as his camera flash. I'll do my best, said the politician, as if he would, looking around for his wife, who was caught up in a chat across the street. Say, he said to this cowboy standing too close to the girl, why aren't you signed up to fight? Soul support, he said. A crippled mother. He gave the girl a sidelong look. She was watching the parade watchers fold their chairs. I'm sorry to hear that, said the politician with a nod of suspicion. The kid with his handsomeness, with his thumbs hooked to his belt loops, and enough of a grin to signal he could take whatever he got, nodded back. Help my girl pack the rest of the flyers out to my car, why don't you, said the politician. He gestured toward the bale of flyers behind her. Show him where, he said to his daughter. Hump hauled the bale. He wasn't giving her the where-to look most men gave her in the pretty big town she came from. He was taking his time, a specimen she had had little recent experience with. Nearly all the able-bodied had flocked to the draft. He looked very able-bodied. She led him through the waist-high weeds into the lot. Her mother parked the car beside. Are you a religious nut, she asked. Is that really why you haven't been drafted? You have no manners, he said, and then he raised the bale of flyers with one finger over her head, as if she should now take them from him. My ankle, she screeched, turning her heel on a weed. Ouch, she said, and dropped herself suddenly, but not too violently, to the ground. That hurt, she mewed. Miss Walker, he said. Miss? He dropped the flyers to the ground and bent over to check the damage. She caught him by the neck and pulled him to her so far down that the weeds hit them both. Now I am both a girl of virtue and my father's daughter, but here, she kissed him on the cheek, you can kiss me back. I could do better than that, he said, and puckered right up on her mouth and passed his gum to her. She spit it out, you idiot. Pretty low, he said, falling like that. He walked off without the flyers. Anyway, so they finally get together, as you might imagine. And this is Hump at his place of work. He gets a job at the bomb site. Hump drank a sip of coffee from his canteen and made a face. Then he walked over with a shovel to where his buddies were probing the soil with theirs, trying to break into the tough prairie grass. Shingles stuck up nearby, tapped into place to show where earlier turkeys had ended up. Those are bad bombs that leaked. With fast-fading location numbers painted on the shingles, some already fallen over and blown a few feet off. About half of the shingles they had put in themselves. I think the burying, said Hump. It's so morbid. Yeah, well, said Matthews, the conscientious objector who wore a full beard like Jesus, so nobody could get confused about it. Better than dropping a bomb on somebody. The short guy, Fred, was on his toes, studying a rained-on piece of graph paper spread on a big truck's hood. I think we got leeway here. Is that a 5 or a 2 where they want them? So why don't you just check the carbon, said Matthews. Because somebody smart left it on the dash and now it's all faded. Fred held up a second paper to the sun. Matthews leaned into his shovel. So, why don't we just drive on over to that new blowout and put them in where the soil's looser, said Hump. If you'd have been listening to the lieutenant, you'd know, said Fred. Anyway, we don't get to decide much. We are always thinking, he said to Hump, about how to do it easier. Hump didn't deny his thoughtfulness. The other two were the problem. Otto, the Indian, hears shovel and has to hear stop before he lays it down, which is why they put him with Matthews, who was nearly as bad, as angry as he was about the war. But Matthews was already changing his digging style, towing in a nice long trench for one bomb and then the other, and not the coffee-looking pit they usually dug, not so deep. They can't fire us, said Matthews. There's nobody else to do the work. We'd better put them close together, Fred said, not even thinking any more about no. You ought to write the manual, said Hump, moving Otto into place. I sure would put a few more things into it, Fred said, working his shovel in the trench alongside Matthews. They get to digging fast. The sun hung way past lunch position when they were finished. No one suggested they stop and eat what they brought along. They were hopped up fully. They were nervous and smiling. Fred backed the truck up to the long hole, and they cranked down the first sling until the shell was nestled in nicely. Then they slid the sling out from under it ever so gently. The shell drooled at its seams. Maybe it was new drool. It was hard to tell because the corrosion set in so fast once it got started. They were even slower getting the second one out of the truck, and they sacrificed its sling, leaving it under its belly right where they laid it. Then they were supposed to pack in the dirt as if it were cotton balls. Fred started dusting it with light loads, but Hump was angry. Duds for the duds is what that lieutenant called us. His shovelful smacked the shell. Ding! A loose rock hit hard. All of them dropped their tools, ran behind the truck, and plugged their ears with their fingers. The wind blew, and a tumbleweed tumbled. What do you call a chicken that crosses the road for a girl? Asked Hump. Hump, said Otto. Hump made a humping motion. Then he hurled a couple more big clods of dirt at the shell. Ding, ding. A twist of dust rose where one clod missed. This is the real dud, yelled Hump, and he hefted a clod twice as big as the others, jumped out from behind the truck and did a little jitterbug and a turn with it. Like it, he shouted. He threw the clod at the bomb and dove behind the truck again. Nothing. Otto answered Hump by doing something similar, then Fred. Fred was sure wasn't stopping him, not by a long shot. You're all chicken shit, shouted Matthews, hunting around for a piece that was bigger than all of theirs, the biggest. The earth wasn't as rocky there, so he had to search through what they dug up to find something. Came across a clump with a big bone sticking out of it. Peace, he yelled as he threw it. He nearly fell over. He was trying so hard to outdo them. The explosion was sharp and rained earth as if the land was coming apart at the seams. They all inhaled it, each of them raccoon-eyed with a dirt mask. Otto was thrown a ways away. What a mother, said Hump, gasping for breath. A curl of blood was making its way down Otto's face from his nose. He shook his head and his braid waved. He wiped his nose and the back of his hand and sat up. That was fun, he called. Fred and Hump beat each other on the back. Matthew shook his head in disapproval while a big guilty smile broke out across his face. A grass fire had caught over by the truck, so they had to shovel it out. By the time they were loaded up again, it was after 4. The land had a new hole they could use the next time they had to dig. The bomb-scorched area was covered with fresh dirt, and some unplanned rock spew had cracked the truck's windshield. We'll say the truck could have blown, said Fred in a voice higher than usual, inspecting the wrecked windshield. While we were driving here, the turkeys were that bad. It could happen just like that, said Hump, snapping his fingers. Nobody wanted to ride him back. They were still too jittery and scared. They all squeezed into the cab, and Fred roared off as if he didn't want to stick around another second. Over there, see that antelope? Otto leaned forward on the dash, bleeding again, using his left hand to pinch his nose, the other to point. You are a damned Indian with deer, said Matthews. You can't be smelling them. Otto flashed his too many teeth. A herd of antelope that had to be at least 10 miles away. They were that small. Skip ran across the plains. Fred turned his dirt-masked face to Hump. Hot damn, he said, we're all just crazy. They whooped so loud the herd disappeared. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Rob Casper. I'm the publisher of the literary magazine Jubilat. This is what Jubilat looks like. We're in our 10th year. It's a thrill to be here. Thanks to Carolyn and to Jenny for having me back. I was here once upon a time in the upper room, and this room is even more beautiful. It's also a thrill to introduce you to Cathy Park Hong. I first met or heard about Cathy from one of the editors, the founding editors of Jubilat, Christian Hockey. He came into the office one day and talked about her great first collection, Translating Moline, and how much he'd like to actually get her in the magazine. And we did, with issue 13, get a chance to publish her poem, Protean Woods, which I hope we should read tonight. And she also read for the Jubilat Jones Reading Series up at the Jones Library in Amherst, Massachusetts. But I really got to know Cathy when she joined the editorial staff for issue 14. She's been working with the poet E.B. Shockley for the last few issues. In addition to being a wonderful, wonderful editor, though, she's a terrifically smart poet. and I look forward to hearing her poems tonight. So let's welcome Cathy.
A little bit shorter. Hello. I'm really delighted to be in this gorgeous space. I will start off by reading the poem that was first published in Jubilat, Protean Woods. Oh, and I just want to say thank you, Rob. It's always delightful to work with Rob, as a fellow editor for Jubilat, and I'm also excited to read with John Wray and Terese Svoboda. England. So it's really wonderful to be here. So I'm going to start with Protean Woods. In the pollen-furred woods, the air floats with fair fauna, white squidlets with poppy seed eyes, centipedal thorns, satin puff-bellied flowers, ready to suck in any powdery swarm of nits. A brook choked with so much citrus algae. It glows like lava, which is sipped by a long-nosed creature who uses its glass-twinning antlers to break away a raft of branches, to reveal a colony, men as big as a bow on this page, muscular and ranting, then sleeping, then swallowed. All right, so I'm going to read some poems from this collection that I'm working on. It's my third collection of poems. It's untitled. It's tentatively called Frontierlands, and it has 3 sections. You could almost think of them as novellas. And each of them, I like to play with speculative cities and landscapes and stuff. So it's about these 3 imagined boom towns. And the first section is, when we think of boom town, we think of the Old West, right? So I've been working on these Western poems. And the first one, and I've been having fun playing with different forms. And this is the lipogram form. And the lipogram form, if you don't know, is a form that only uses 1 vowel. Okay? So this is ballad in A. A Kansan plays cards, calls Marshall a crawdad. That bar brands that rascal a slap. That Kansan jackass scats. Camps back at Caballada Ranch. Hangs cat, axe, and camp hat. Kansas mad, and rants camp fast. Camp bacchanal and garland, alas. Can't at last brag and crack law's balls. Kansas cantata rang at that Ramada Ranch. Manana, Kansas snarls, I'll have an armada and thwart law's brawn. Slam law, a damn mass warpath. Marshall's a marksman. Maps Kansas track, calm as a shaman, sharp as a hawk. Says that dastard Kansas had and gnaws lamb fat back. At dawn, Marshall stalks that ranch, packs a gat and blasts Kansas ass, and Kansas gasps, blast back. A flag flaps at half-mast. Ballad in O. Oh, Boomtown got lots of sort or odd horrors of throwdowns, bold cowboys lock horns, downtrodden hobos plot to rob pots of gold, loco mobs drool for blood, howl or hoot for cottonwood blossoms, thronged hood crooks to strong wood posts. So don't confront hot bloods, don't show off, go to blows or rows, don't sob for gold lost to trollops, don't drown sorrows on shots of grog. Work more to moon down, know how to comb bottom pools, spot dots of gold, spoonfuls of gold, vow to do good, go on home. This is a little bit more serious. It's a longer series of these Western poems. Now I'm just going to read an excerpt. There's a reoccurring character named Arjun, and this is part of it. It's more of a narrative poem. 4 ballads. Ballad of the Range. The whole country is in a duel, and we want no part of it. They see us ride. They say, oh, he meant going the wrong direction. We're getting to California. We ain't got time to enlist.
If some forts ready to be sawed to colt towns, others are abandoned since ricket-limbed Saudis couldn't let their grudges aside and mauled each other to bloodstraws. All around us, forts lie built and unbuilt, half-walled towns as men yoke themselves to state, but we're heading through fields of blue-rye and plains, skull-ground to silt sand, afar boom towns of precious ore, the impulse for declension. Ballad of the Tenderfoot. Called we were from clerking, ferrying, or trapping beavers, called to cover the savage teleology of this corneally flat, untrod land, called to pass through fort towns built from all that was abandoned, iron stoves, cattle bone pipes, and an untanned flag of a pole poked through with hide of kid, though not one man replies to our howls, fading to hoarsened calls. We stood too long in our jackass-colored liveries, too long with one dumb leg mulched in shallow ponds, our dust-paled specter ravels. Ballad of Fort Man. Come to a fort of ragged cedar posts, rigged together by rodent sinews of prairie dogs. We holler and little boys peek from above, their faces seared by blast wind. Who you be? What you want? They shout thinly. Boys in rags and twine suspenders hold Winchesters much too big for them. They aim at us. Where are your pops? They ain't war. We lost a brother axed in the head by a rancid trapper, so we pluck one boy from the litter, lure him out with hen fruit and fresh violet marrow. We pounce him, christen him Jim. But our adapted boy's head done turned, all he does is sing, his throat a tender load of turn flutes, disturbing our herd, singing of malaria, his murderous lime-corroded maw. Maw ballad. A beet-red adobe acropolis with a guano-whitened belfry. Missing is its function, the great bell, so it frames only grayish light, a harping muteness. But then we hear the wretched groping cries, a horsehair tightrope tied from one barrack to another, and the crowd jeers and rails till a rouge-doused banker in a stovepipe hat is pushed from the balcony trembling against the ledge. Walk it, you rotten cheat. They shoot and he flinches, dances without meaning. They fire again until he fumbles 1 foot on the rope, and before he makes his second, he falls too fast for us to even see his suspended froggish body. The thud, his silence, they ain't one bit sated, so full their harem pent. Ballad of Tombstone, Omaha. Days gone immortal, the bleached ruin of light lasts and lasts, no night to repair our minds, no white-clipped moon to give us rest, only pitiless noon where our sleep-starved consciousness patters faintly behind our squinted eyelids. Then sod homes no bigger than raised graves, and inside none dwelled, only nail keg and soapbox for chairs. We sat the sod homes down, drank drambeer. As we pulled the last of the spuds, phantom harridans rage from these mounds to chase us down, earth crusted to their salt skin as if God didn't finish his making, and we shot, 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 and nothing but plovers rose into the air. And then, let's read Obad. I dreamed a regicide, though there is no king. Only bullhorns booming. Judgment has been made by people, and 100 bodies are piled in a room awaiting word, sodden with their neighbor's sputum. I dreamed last night that it took one sword, its steel cold as ice nettles melt. Then I awake to a blast of siren, an assembly of we who rise and yawn and rinse our pits. The middleman with a shoe sewn inside his breast doles as gadgets to screw. And screw we do under the heaven of a million volted lights, like our ancestors who sewed tigers back into their pelts under charred salt bells. Told to starve, they starved and sucked the hoofprint ponds of knits for a hint of meat. We are the same cardiac pulp, unchanged, given the choice to gorge, we gorge until we blow. All right. And this is the second section of the book, and this is another imagined boomtown, which is kind of based on present-day industrial towns in China. And this boomtown is called Chengdu, and it's based on the Chengdu Marco Polo. And these are prose poems, and I'll just read an excerpt. I'll just read 3 of them. And a lot of them are based on other kind of images, found images. Adventures in Chengdu. Of lucky high-rise apartment 88. The contractors were in such a hurry to catch up with the rest of the world that they rushed off before they finished building high-rise 88. So here's my apartment without its last wall gaping out to a panoramic view of Chengdu's river. The soda barges that creep past my building like brooding islands braided with a riot of seagulls. Across the river, all the white-tiled factories hum anxiously. This hum of 2,000 factories can inspire or drive you mad. Yesterday, a drunk man and a suicide used 88's unencumbered views to fall to their deaths, and now there are ads for new roommates. I am one of the few without a roommate since there are not enough women anymore to share a room. My last roommate married as quickly as she moved in with me. I see her in the neighborhood, pregnant and gloating, with men who fetch her footstools. The next one is actually based on an image by this video artist, Wally Rod. An image that I feel, basically. Of the Millennial Promenade along the river. Vendors line along the promenade to serve passersby. They sell pinwheels, pancakes, and roast meats of all kinds, even sticks of prickly little seahorses. One female vendor keeps peeled apples under her armpit until they are saturated with her scent, and then she sells them so customers can luxuriate in both the scent of fruit and her ripeness. Along the promenade, the rabble is enraptured by the new tower across the river, but the vendors grumble of slow business. Officials installed cameras behind the vendors' umbrella fringes to catch conspirators. Today, there is no drama, so the vendors gossip. It is true that the fried prawn vendor tilted his surveillance camera so it caught nothing but the sun. Officials executed him after they watched the useless footage of the sun bobbing up and down for 100 days. Why did you do such a stupid thing? He was a saboteur, said one. We should all destroy the cameras. Everyone knows about them and it takes away business, said a third. It was for personal reasons. He was stupid in love and his lover walked out, and the vendor stopped short for the cameras were recording. Of the old colonial Dutch quarters. When I imagine the city, it is not the city that I want, but the city that I fear. But I too have an obsession. He is one of the painters who work in the Rembrandt factory. He paints 5 Rembrandt self-portraits a day, which I hear are sold to rich townhouses and hotels in a place called Florida. He is renowned to be the fastest painter in Chengdu, and he has completed 10,000 Rembrandt self-portraits. In the mornings, I walk past him when he is on his smoke break. Today, I catch him sniffing his hand. Oh. All right. I'm just going to read just a few poems, like 3 poems from Dance Dance Revolution, which is my second collection of poems, and it's basically it's a series of poems, and it's about this imagined city, just simply called the desert, and it's in the voice of the tour guide of the desert, and she speaks in this fabricated dialect that I basically made it up, and she is the tour guide of the St. Petersburg Hotel. All the hotels are modeled after different cities around the world. And she used to be a South Korean dissident. So I'm just going to read just a few of them so you get a taste of the book. Rolls. Opus. Behold, neon hibiscus bloom beacons. You're losing curse you, Virgil. When eyes take over, ask talkie, Virgil. Want some tea, some penny who? Mine vocation, your vacation. I train mine talk bots to talk about. As you Americans say, purdy. No goods, only phrases. Better the phrase purdier the experience. 20,000 guides here, but I'm number one. Once Helsinkian arrive, I say, I guide. But Helsinkian meow, no, too many guides. And I sleep outside indoor, him awake. I say calmly, I guide. Ye Helsinkians say, God damn it, yeah, okay, guide me. A million light bulbs in desert with cleanest latrines in our strobe-lit lobby since desert non-sing. Each hotel the Bacasma in each city. Bangkok over here, Paris over there. I speak some Hangul, Finnish, good bit of Latin, Spanish, some Turkish, desert Creole, ever-changing diphthong upon my mood, ibid. Many American dumplings on his and talk holes, he ejaculate. Oh, how diggity, this is a she-it. A gut-ripping dunter rectalis we exploit Gagala, aborigine to back tundra country, Banitas. But better to scrape that fact under history rugs or shh. Oh, tempora, oh, Morris. I used to move around like Inuit looking for sea pelt. Now I'm a double migrant, seated from Korea, seated from America, seated, e-seated, till I season this sizable mouthpiece roll. Now let's drive to interior. This is about it. This poem's about a toilet. So she's giving a tour of the hotel. So this is the washrooms of St. Petersburg Hotel. Behold the toilet gurgle of flush kaputs and zipped second, the porcelain not clam cold but warm like oven loin mitts. Urging you waste to dive into cleanest ammonia pond. The buttons in toilet manifold, pequeño as mungings, one for concierge if you suffer bellyache, another squirts a fountain of water to wash you besmirched whole after status. One that will pipe in Wagner or disco, then perfume to fume the awful air. So comfy, grass latrines make you want to sit on its porcelain domus, you read great literature. Mind over matter, Samsey, mind over matter. Even if you ate bad mulligatawny, your mind's fog will curdle the cleanest top blue. Reflecting how he was in the day's events were tink fist-propped and chin about being, yes, sentient being, you may wonder. Sense or essence? Or you may muse back evening blue room and lounge when he had sensual tension with tenderone lats, with your knees be kissing beneath the table. Toilets so seductive, yet tush vacuum to whole, stuck like fire ant trapped in own feast of glassy peach pie. This is the last poem I'll read. Karaoke lounge. Impish peeper, you ear-dropping. When I ululate to mine face a grapey pulp croaking K-pop in this privacy room, me bumming see, shoe, ka, tour is over, shoe. No, stay. Some sing swallow nightingales, phlegm. Some sing nightingales in a flora, but we closet singers in a box, a mic. A grog-sodden salaryman sing, oh Lord, no hair, just me felf. He keens till he lurched into a mic with no invocatory mic, whom lung raised and like him balls. He sleeping, dreaming, or tongue or tigers in red weather. We sing solo, tone deaf, gargle, a bauble, it pops dead o' night, a non-Sinatra canon, ask a ballad bloom in room, then buzzes stop. So you want to hear me story, Apinitio, about my domus, about Sa? My mother, rest her soul, sang for all, long a fireplace breather, bronchial tree aflame till she spit a blood wad. She sang pansori, one beat drum, a cowbell, whole day a story sung, tong seong. Ari, epic song lasting 2, 3, 4 days. Sponge the Han, 슬픈 얘기, 사랑한 남편, with only a fan, a jug, to wet her throat. Thank you.
tonight. Thank you to Jenny for the introduction, and to Carolyn and Mark for inviting us here. Being in a magazine that's only not quite 5 years old, the history of a place like this library is very special, so it's nice to be here tonight for the magazine. It's also an honor to share the podium with two of my favorite editors in magazines, Jubilat and No Story, and to get to hear Terese and Cathy read. And I am delighted to get to introduce John Wray, who I have known for many, many years, all the way back to high school Spanish class, and who now has his own writing studio across the street from the magazine in Brooklyn. He is the author, as you may know, of 3 novels, The Right Hand of Sleep, Canaan's Tongue, and Lowboy, which came out last year, and which was written mostly on the subways, the New York City subway, and is set in large part on the New York City subways. And in the course of writing the novel, he one day stayed on the 6 train a little too long and passed through that closed subway station, the old City Hall station, which was the starting point of the piece that he did for the magazine last year. It's an illustrated essay called The Impossible Sightseeing Tour of New York City. So please join me in welcoming John Wray.
I'm just going to take this microphone in my hand as though I was performing karaoke for you. Yeah, so this is more of a, I guess, of a mixed media thing that I'm going to do. Not only have I known Brigid forever, but I've been a big fan of the magazine since it started, and always wanted to do something that could be included in it. Unfortunately, I've never written a piece of short fiction that was worth a damn. So it took a while to figure something out that might work. I should also say that my good friend Matt Dodney, who did the wonderful illustrations for this little tour we're going to go on, couldn't be here tonight, but he should get a lot of credit for this. You know, I've lived in New York since 1993, and it's certainly long enough to hear all sorts of weird apocryphal or perhaps not so apocryphal stories about all sorts of secret places around New York. And I myself have always been kind of fascinated by particularly the underground of New York City. And I thought it might be fun to do a little guided tour through sites in New York City that are actually absolutely, well, some of them are sort of not quite so impossible, but most of them are impossible to see or to visit. Nevertheless, they do exist. So none of the places we're going to look at tonight are apocryphal as far as I was able to determine. I wanted to start with what's under Bryant Park in Manhattan. There used to be an enormous water reservoir there, but now there's something very different, and it looks a little bit like that. If you could imagine this drawing, but extending sort of beyond the range of sight in every direction, these sort of identical little pillars. I'll read what we have here. In the early 1980s, faced with rapidly dwindling shelf space in their 7 tiers of stacks, the New York Public Library on 42nd Street, the one with the lions, you probably don't know that, but that's for people not from New York, prevailed upon the city to fund the construction of a gargantuan book storage annex, 30 feet under the grass and London plane trees of Bryant Park. The annex, known to the library staff as the Bryant Park Stack Extension, BIPSI for short, was built into the site of the former Croton Reservoir, almost the exact length and breadth of the park overhead. The first level of the extension was developed into a state-of-the-art archival facility with climate control and high-density storage stacks that slide silently apart at the touch of a button, which is very impressive. It doesn't sound that impressive, but when you actually see it happen, you feel as though you're in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation or something. The entire lower level, however, tens of thousands of square feet, the equivalent of half a city block, stands immaculate and empty to this day. By the time the extension was finished, digital media storage had rendered it all but obsolete. One thing that I didn't mention in this little and this little bit of text, is that it's actually also the site of the Google project. I don't know if you guys know about the Google project, but it's Google's attempt to scan every single bit of printed matter that's ever been produced. And they have this very strange glassed-in kind of complex within this large empty space, and it's just brightly lit by these fluorescent lights, and all of these very sort of techish looking nerds are in there just scanning one book after another. It's really pretty great. Now let's see if I can figure out how to do this. There we go. That's a, if you can, I don't know if you can read the text, that's a drawing of a cadaver refrigerator. The north side of Ellis Island, home to the Immigration Museum, has been lovingly restored and receives nearly 1 million visitors a year. The south side of the island, however, a much bigger area, which you don't actually really notice if you go to the Immigration Museum so much, is currently off limits. It may simply be coincidence that most of the less rosy immigration narratives played out on the island's south side, in the psychiatric buildings, quarantine ward, and autopsy theater of its hospital complex. Not every new American actually made it to America proper, as it turns out, and many never made it off the island. The upper floors of the isolation wards, where generations of fatally ill immigrants spent their final hours, really have some of the most beautiful views of the Statue of Liberty that you can get. It's really, they had a nice view in their final days and moments. But it is true that, you hear about people coming to the United States packed into these little ships, and you kind of wonder at the ability that, these people to survive the trip. But the truth is that many, many of them did not. And they were then put into quarantine on Ellis Island, and some of them recovered from the diseases that they caught while on ship, and many of them didn't. And this actually is very much what it looks like. You have this incredible picture-perfect view of the Statue of Liberty, which, however, is looking past you if you're in these rooms. It's kind of looking over at the people who, I guess, made it all the way. And this is not too far from the offices of the public space, actually. This is a very funny thing. Girolamo Street between Hicks and Willow, which is in Brooklyn Heights, is possibly the most picturesque block in Brooklyn, but it has an odder distinction than that. Midway down the block's southwest side, the second of 4 nearly identical townhouses stands out suddenly, though it takes a moment's attention to understand why. The doors of the house are painted steel, with no handle, knocker, or bell. The 8 small pane windows are tinted black, like the windshield of a diplomat's Lexus, or a Hummer, or something like that. Where the garden apartment should be, a sheet metal superstructure skirts the house, like an enormous blacked-out skylight, or the entryway to a fallout shelter, or a pillbox from the Second World War. One thing, and one thing only, is clear right away. No one lives at 58 Girolamo Street. A plaque on a standpipe at pavement level offers the only clue to the townhouse's true function. Tunnel IRT 45 line NYC Transit. 58 Girolamo is not, as it turns out, a house at all anymore. For the last 100 years, it's really been 100 years, it's quite amazing. The building has served the MTA as an emergency exit and fan plant for its 4 and 5 subway lines. The historic facade hides an elevator, a stairway, and an air vent the size, shape, and volume of the house it replaced. The building is well maintained, its brick house front painted an unassuming shade of burgundy, not exactly the color I would have chosen, but it still looks quite tidy, with matte charcoal trim. I wonder who picked out the colors. I mean, considering it was someone who worked for the MTA, they did a pretty good job. Oh, and this is, rather than being a drawing of the place, this is a sort of cartoon reproduction of an etching which exists of this event. This is maybe the most potentially apocryphal of the stories, but it seems to have actually occurred. like its doppelganger at Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn, not to mention its illustrious progenitor, the Arc de Triomphe. The Washington Arch in Washington Square has an observation deck concealed behind its crowning parapet. The deck has been off limits virtually since its construction, but it remains accessible, at least theoretically, by means of a spiral staircase in the arch's western foot. All sorts of village celebrities are rumored to have partied there over the years, from Dylan Thomas to Ivan Broski, which I have a hard time believing Ivan Broski, to Grace Jones, which I don't have a hard time believing. But the most glorious of the arch's authenticated conquests took place on the 23rd of January 1917. On that night, in heavy snowfall, 6 self-proclaimed arch conspirators, among them Marcel Duchamp, the painter John Salon, and Gertrude Drick, a well-known poet at the time, who lived in the village, took advantage of a temporarily unlocked door to storm the parapet and take up residence there until daybreak. Blankets were spread, Chinese lanterns were hung, tea was sipped, and cat pistols were fired into the dark. Sounds like a good party. Mrs. Drick read a proclamation out loud to no one in particular, declaring Washington Square a, quote, free and independent republic. Reports vary as to what happened in the morning, but apparently the parapet was surrendered without bloodshed. And this is the station that Brigid was describing. There's a sort of pivotal scene in my novel that takes place in this long abandoned station. This is the old original City Hall station, which is sort of the flagship station for the subway when it was open. When the Interborough Rapid Transit Company's City Hall station opened on October 27, 1904, it was the IRT's showpiece, the jewel in the crown of the city subway system. The 400-foot platform curved in a sharp Moorish crescent. The sea blue and sand-colored tilework, the vaulted ceilings, and the enormous skylights, which are kind of violet or amethyst colored. They're really beautiful, actually. Made the station seem like an exotic transplant from some faraway, possibly even extraterrestrial transit system. The station was an anachronism before it was built, a monument to an era when romance and technological progress were still intertwined in the popular consciousness. I waxed a little rhapsodic here. And it was finally closed to the public on New Year's Eve 1945. When it was closed, I doubt that anyone was too surprised. Actually, modern trains don't even fit into this station anymore, they're too long. Unlike the other stops on this tour, the station, or at least its platform, it actually extends up this way to the former entryway to the station, which is really amazing. The station, or at least its platform, is accessible to anyone with a Metro car. Just stay on any downtown 6 train once it's arrived at Brooklyn Bridge City Hall, the current Brooklyn Bridge station, on the 6th. And after the conductor's last stop announcement, just stay seated. Try to be small and don't call attention to yourself. After a minute or so, the doors will slide shut and the train will roll through the old station at a smooth, ghostly crawl, reversing direction for the Bronx-bound leg of its run. You'll go through the old station and sort of half lit. You'll see you move at a slow pace. You're not going very fast, and they actually still use the old station as a way to turn the trains around, to turn the downtown 6 into an uptown 6. So you come right back out just across the platform from where you just were. And you don't, if they catch you, they just kind of give you a talking to. So don't worry, you won't go on your criminal record. Okay, so this one, do you have the magazine? Yeah, this one was a 2-pager, so, whoops. Okay. This is my favorite drawing of Matt's. I don't know if any of you guys can recognize what this is before I even tell you, but that's those strange structures in the distance are from the World's Fair. They're still there. For the 1964-1965 World's Fair in Flushing Meadows, Gerard Henderson, retired Avon executive, paranoiac, and founder of the brand new Underground World Home Corporation, installed a prototype home of tomorrow 15 feet below the ground. Henderson and his partner, Jay Swayze, claimed to have determined that 80% of Americans never looked out their windows, and that those who did saw something undesirable 50% of the time. The conclusion was clear: it was better to see nothing at all. In addition to wonderfully low heating and air conditioning costs, not to mention the luxury of quote-unquote absolute privacy, their prototype offered unparalleled protection from radioactive fallout, a highly sought-after feature in post-Cuban Missile Crisis America. According to World's Fair attendance records, 516,000 people visited the site, which included a 3-bedroom apartment, a spacious tiled studio, and carefully composed murals of uniformly desirable trees. From 10 at night until 2 a.m., the patio became a discotheque in which 175 lucky fairgoers could groove to a selection of contemporary pop hits, including "Come On Down to the Bottom of the Fair" by the Johnny Mann Singers. When the fair closed in autumn of 1965, all traces of the Underground World Home were eradicated, and no records of its exact location have survived. And it is really true, not even the Parks Department can say with any certainty where it now lies. No one has any idea where it is. It's still there somewhere though, because all they did was pave it over. There's a controversy that is back and forth depending on who you talk to. Some people think it's probably long since filled with water and muck, and some people think you just need to find the right space and just kind of cut up the asphalt and you can just go right back in. Of all the sites on this tour, North Brother Island, just downriver from Rikers, off the east coast of the Bronx, is the most remote and arguably the most impossible to visit. From the 1850s through the Second World War, the island was the site of Riverside Hospital, a quarantine center that housed hundreds of inmates, including the queen of them all, Typhoid Mary, who lived in a small private cottage on the island for the last 20 years of her life. She never left. In the 50s, the 1950s, the hospital was converted into a center for adolescent drug users. But reports of staff corruption and rampant abuse of patients shut it down after barely a decade. Messages scrawled on or cut into the walls of many of the rooms testified to the desperation of North Brothers residents during this period. And this is an actual one that we found that pretty, well, sort of said it all. The island seems never to have been a particularly happy place, which is a shame because it's quite beautiful, and now there's a wonderful colony of American egrets, actually, on the north side, I think. Oh no, black-ground night herons, I'm sorry. The island is, where am I? Where did I get lost? Today, after nearly 50 years of abandonment, North Brother is thickly forested, and many of its buildings are dangerous to enter, but still kind of fun to enter. The island is home to a large nesting colony of black-crowned night herons, and the ornithologists who monitor the colony are the only sanctioned visitors. They're the only people who are legally allowed to go there, and it's been that way for over a decade. Due to the closeness of the maximum security prison at Rikers, the waters around North Brother are heavily patrolled by the Coast Guard, and even the ornithologists, who were the ones who took me along, occasionally find themselves surrounded by boats full of heavily armed men. For the rest of us, the island's stubborn persistence on maps of New York City is the only indication that it exists at all. All right, that's it for the tour. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for coming, and please enjoy the food and the drink and swirl around.